today. My name is Joanna Leone, and I am the Director of Membership here at WERC, now powered by MHI. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join us for today's presentation. Today's webinar is being recorded and all participants are in listen-only mode. The information discussed in today's session represents the views of the individuals and does not constitute legal advice or the views of WERC or MHI. You should consult with your organization's leadership and legal counsel as needed for your specific situations. At the end of today's presentation, we will have a question and answer period. You will be able to ask your questions through the Q&A or chat section located at the bottom of your screen or along the right-hand side, depending on your computer settings. So without further ado, I would like to turn the presentation over to today's moderator, Greg with Alpine Supply Chain Solutions.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining. Today's session is going to be titled World-Class Preparation Leads to the Winner's Circle, taking your project from washed out to front runner. Jamie, can you progress the slide?
Oh, thank you. Absolutely.
So my name is Greg Utter. I'm a Senior Managing Director with Alpine Supply Chain Consulting. I run our systems practice and I will be your moderator today. Next slide, please.
There we go.
So as I said, today's session is about world-class preparation leads to the winner's circle. And we're going to hit on four real key topics that we're going to run through throughout this webinar. The first one is, why do more projects not move forward to the winner's circle? The second, what is the most important project discipline to avoid congestion? And lastly, when a project does not deliver in the money, what is the reason? Today's presenter is Jamie Suryana. She's a Senior Director at Alpine Supply Chain. She is a PMP, Professional Management Professional, a Certified Scrum Master, CSM, and a Certified Scrum Product Owner, a CSPO. So as you can see, she's well credentialed. She's a Certified Project Management Professional that has over 30 years of hands-on experience. At Alpine, she's a leader in our supply chain systems and HR practices. She's got a wealth of WMS implementation and rollouts under her belt, both domestically and abroad. Jamie has a passion for people and processes that makes her a pro at bringing together diverse groups of stakeholders to develop creative solutions to technical and business problems. Her colleagues say about her that she's the organizational glue that holds projects together, keeping everyone on point and on schedule. Jamie holds a BA in Business Administration and a minor in Psychology from the University of the Incarnate World, UIW. A community leader in partnership with St. Mary's University at the Greek School of Business in San Antonio, she helped design the curriculum for a program called Innovative Leadership. So as you can see, Jamie is well credentialed and well qualified to talk about today's topic. And with that, Jamie, I'm going to let you lead ahead.
Great. Thank you, Greg.
You're viewing there you go.
There we go. So this is a real passion of mine. I'm going to speak today about why do more projects not move into the winner's circle? Why are there so many projects that actually fail or don't deliver to the stakeholders' expectations? So there have been numerous studies done. PMI, which is the Project Management Institute, usually do a study every year about the state of project management, as well as Gartner, Project Smart UK, InfoWorld, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Harvard Business Review, and many more reputable organizations, all from right around the year 2021, did their own studies to try and figure out why projects fail. And they showed that about 66 to 85% of information technology projects fail. And that's not all of the news. The news is actually a bit worse than that. Forbes, from around the same time, looked specifically at some statistics from the most recent Gartner reports, the PricewaterhouseCoopers study, Harvard Business Review, and the PMI studies prior to the publication of this article in their Enterprise Tech publication to see if they could dig into what was going on. And they found out that IT projects are notoriously difficult to manage. Now, this is typically because they touch many aspects of the business and require a lot of integration, a lot of interfaces, cooperation with many different departments, and often there are competing priorities within those departments. The average IT project overruns its budget by 27%. That's more than a quarter of its budget it's overrun by. And about 1 in 6 IT projects turns into a black swan. And that means it has a cost overrun of 200% and a schedule overrun of 70%. 17% of IT projects go so bad that they threaten the very existence of the company. I was shocked when I read this. I was just stunned. And again, that's not all. I think this was the most startling fact I found. The more expensive the project is, the more likely it is to fail. Each of these studies independently found that projects that cost $1 million or more fail at least 50% of the time, while projects that cost $350,000 or less are the most likely to succeed. Now, you can think, or you can argue that the less expensive projects are likely less complex, and they probably have less integrations, less interfaces, probably less equipment. Again, this is just a generalization. You know, you go project by project to be specific, but the more expensive, the more likely it is to fail, which is shocking and startling because the IT projects are usually the most expensive and touch the most. They're the most invasive. By invasive, I mean they touch the biggest percentage, the biggest parts within a company. So given that, how do we make sure our projects move to the winner's circle? We're one of the ones that actually succeed. We avoid congestion by being proactive with our risk management and mitigation plans. So just a quick review. I think we all know what risk is, but just to make sure we're all on the same page, risk is an uncertain event or condition that if it occurs, it has a positive or a negative effect on the project's objectives. Now, I know a lot of times risk is associated with negative, but it is possible for a risk to have a positive effect as well. It has a cause, and if it occurs, it has a consequence. A project risk includes a threat or it could include an opportunity to improve on the project's objectives. Now, I also want to point out that a threat and an opportunity, these are not things that are currently occurring in the project. These are things that could occur in the future. So what we're asking is, as a project and as a project team, we're being forward thinking. If something is happening now, that's a problem. That's not a risk, that's a problem. And that needs to be addressed immediately.
So Jamie, real quickly, I mean, is it just a project plan that you have to keep track of and those milestones in order to mitigate this risk, or is it more than just that? Meaning steering committee meetings, leadership involvement? What are a couple of examples that you've seen in the real world that truly boil down where risk lays?
Well, yes, this is actually, this is a separate activity. And I think this is a reason that it is often either undermanaged or not managed at all. Many look to this as just an activity, a single time activity on a project plan, or just a little checklist that you can tick off. But a risk is, it's actually a separate activity and should be managed as such. And I'll give you some examples. Actually, that leads me right in, well, this is an important slide. Yes, there are, I'm going to actually get to that, Greg, if I may put you off just a moment. I've got some good examples coming up, I think in 2 slides. If I can put you on hold for a minute with that question. It's important because it reduces the number of surprise events. Our project plans and our project schedules, these list out how we plan for the project to go, things that we know is going to happen, our meetings that we're going to schedule. Risk management is something more encompassing than that. The goal of it is to help us reduce the number of surprises we have and help minimize consequences of adverse events, maximize results of positive events, prepare a team to handle negative events, plans responses when these events occur, both positive and negative events. And it allows the team to actually expand their capacity when these unplanned events occurs. And the way that they can expand their capacity is because you've planned for things that you can foresee. Therefore, you have a response ready. That gives you some capacity when unplanned things happen. You can then respond to those because you've got the things that you've already able to foresee, planned for. Now here, the best time for risk management is early and often. Begin it in your project kickoff meetings. Discuss it with everyone that attends. Discuss it with all the stakeholders that are there, because they're going to have different perspectives than you will. You'll anticipate all the risks that you can up front, but they're going to know other external and internal risks that you may not have accounted for, as well as some unanticipated risks. And then, and I think this is where some mistakes are made, is you may plan for risks once, but it needs to continue throughout the life of the project. And risks can be identified at any time, not just in one meeting. It needs to be revisited often and regular meetings scheduled. So what I like to do is during my kickoff meeting, engage my stakeholders, get their input, gauge their readiness for change, and get a feel for their risk tolerance. Are they risk adverse? Are they, open to accepting, what level of risk are they able to accept? And we'll get into some examples here in a minute. And tell them that the project manager will be contacting them to complete a risk identification questionnaire and schedule some risk impact meetings. Determine who should be attending the risk meetings, what day is the best day to hold these meetings, and how long they should be. And then depending on the duration of the project, a recurring meeting should be held. Once a month, once every other month, again, depending on the life of the project, they should definitely be a regular meeting. Who owns the risk? Who does the risk management? The project manager has the overall responsibility, and then the entire project team, stakeholders, and even the external team members should participate. You really want to get as much input as possible, because that's just going to broaden your horizon. It's going to broaden the input and give you more perspective on what could possibly go wrong, as well as what opportunities might be out there for you to take advantage of. Now, here's the kinds of risks we have. We have known unknown, known knowns. These are risks that absolutely exist. There's no uncertainty about it. The impact is known, they will occur, and you're able to plan. So here's an example that actually happened. Building a new warehouse, new dock doors and dock levelers. A concern was raised, a risk was raised about the operation and maintenance of the doors and dock levelers. Johnson controls were used in the past, but it wasn't this exact specific setup. So the facility manager raised this as a concern. We discussed it as a group, and the mitigation plan was that they would be tested prior to go live, and it would be part of the facility turnover. Facility operations would coordinate with facility service, and if there were any issues, it would be handled under warranty. So that's a known. You know what's going to be installed. You know whether or not you've used it before. And yes, used it before, but not this configuration. So yeah, there's a chance something might not work right. So let's raise it now, and let's determine how we're going to deal with it, how we're going to test it, what we'll do if there is a problem. Another type of risk is the known unknowns. So this is a risk that exists. So you know for a fact it exists, but you don't know the exact impact. And again, this is a for sure risk that will be happening here in about a little less than a month. So hurricane season starts on Wednesday, June 1st, 2022, and it ends on November 30th, 2022. We have a hurricane season every year. So we know, we can look ahead to see when it starts and when it ends. We know likely somewhere, sometime, there's going to be some damage. We don't know the path of the storms. We don't know how many storms there'll be, but we know likely there will be. So we've got agencies in place that, look at the paths, their predictions. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong, but you know that the risk definitely exists. The impact is unknown. How do you prepare for that? You have a plan. You have triggers that when it gets to be a certain level, if you're in a certain part of the country, then the trigger gets pulled for that plan to go into effect, and you act accordingly. And then there is the third category, which I don't think any of us like, is the unknown unknowns. And these are risks that cannot be identified, and the impact is unknown. This we've all been through recently. These are events like the pandemic, the current supply chain issues we're experiencing in some areas, like the chips in certain cars, some labor shortages in some markets. So these are things that, you know, the risk can't be identified ahead of time, but just because we just don't have any knowledge of it and the impact is unknown. Did that answer your question, Greg?
Yeah, it just goes to the unknown unknowns, and we don't have a crystal ball. Nobody does. But planning ahead for that is again not 100% bulletproof. Just knowing that you can't predict. And you hit a great point on supply chain disruptions, and we're all seeing it. We're working on a couple of projects right now where we're waiting for RF equipment and access points. And originally the vendors that we went out and looked at said it was 3 to 6 months. And then they said it's, 8 to 10 months. And then we're procuring RF devices different models than what we wanted originally. And we're trying to make up ground, and it all impacts the overall timeline, and we all hate scope creep. So, avoiding that unknown is just not completely possible. But what do you see as a way to plan for those unknown unknowns? Is it pushing out a project timeline? Is it putting in milestones that say, if I don't get this done by this date based upon supply chain disruptions, we know that we're going to have some wiggle room to extend a project for X amount of time? I mean, what's the best way to convey that from an overall project standpoint? So when you do have your steering committee meetings, people aren't asking consistently, why are we not on time?
Yeah, that's a great question. Firstly, I'd like to make the point, this is why it is so important that you do risk management and mitigation and that you're proactive with it. If you are planning for your known knowns and your known unknowns actively, then you'll have those covered as best you can. So you're not spending unnecessary time being reactive to things that you could have planned for already. So you're not spending time, just reacting to things, not reacting to known knowns and known unknowns. And that is how you can expand your team's capacity to react to these unknown unknowns. If you're having your regular steering committee meetings, your regular risk management meetings, you have an open forum to communicate your risks on a recurring basis. This is going to help you build trust and credibility with your project team and with your senior management. So they are going to have a level of trust with you. Another good thing is be looking more broadly at events that are occurring, not just in your neighborhood or in your state or part of the world, but look globally at what's going on to see, what could possibly happen, and, develop a more global perspective. And just use some time to continue brainstorming with your group of stakeholders. I'm never afraid to be embarrassed at what I throw out there, just to say, hey, do you think this could ever happen here? Do you think this could ever happen there? Do you think this could ever happen? And give your stakeholders and in your meetings a chance to give you feedback. And help them understand, hey, we're all in this together. I know the way we operate now, there's not really any extra time built in the budget much, but you can always, if you're working a 5-day work week or you're working a 1-shift day or a 2-shift day, you can always look at opportunities to expand shifts, add other shifts, go to a 6-day work week or maybe a 7-day work week, or look at one thing a customer of mine has done in the past to help stay on schedule is look at projects across a month and look at 2-week increments. So instead of working 5 days on, 2 days off, 5 days on, 2 days off, they work 6 days on, 1 day off, 4 days on, or they also have the opportunity to work 12 days on and then have 4 days off. So they do A weeks and B weeks. So, you know, you can get creative with the schedule, and, you know, ask for help from your stakeholders. Ask them, you know, to help. What are their ideas to help you manage the schedule?
Sure.
It's amazing what they can help you come up with when you have a sense of being a team. And that's why I really advocate for these recurring meetings, because it does more than just, you know, a meeting and a tick on a checklist. It gives you a chance to, like I said, build that credibility and that trust with a broader range of stakeholders.
Understand. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Now we're going to plan. So how do you plan for a negative risk? You can transfer, which is shift the consequences and ownership to a third party. You can avoid it by eliminating the threat, be removing the scope, extend the schedule, work extra days like we discussed, or you can mitigate it by reducing the probability or the impact. Now, for a positive risk, you can exploit it, which you could be changing the project to make sure the opportunity occurs, which is exactly the opposite of transferring. Exploiting is exactly the opposite of transferring. You can share, so you can form a team or a partnership with a third party, or you can enhance, so increase the probability of the opportunity occurring. Categories of risk, there's so many. These are the ones I have encountered most often is project management, which that deals with estimates, schedules, and timelines. The change management, that's change assessments, change impact analysis, risk assessments, change management plans, communication plans, education opportunities. Then we've got technical risk, which is technical design decisions, interfaces, integrations, impact to upstream or downstream business, dashboards, report, processes. We've got organizational risks, which is resource availability, prioritizations. We've got operations, which is site prep, configuration, trainers, testers, support, go live, HR, operations coordination. And then we have external, which is things like the weather, market, you know, some things like we've already discussed. And then the other category, which is things, you know, that I may not have listed above, but you may encounter, somebody else may encounter on a project. Could be, you know, nothing else comes to mind right now, but I'm sure there's other things that you might encounter. And so when you're analyzing risk, and this is something I definitely involve my stakeholders in. Really, this is them telling me what their, you know, risk tolerance is. So we list all the risks, and then we go through a exercise where we rate the probability of it occurring. Is it low, very low, low, medium, high, or very high? Then the impact if it does occur, and then the impact to the overall project, cost, schedule, scope, quality. If you involve your stakeholders in this, they have ownership and, you know, they've got skin in the game. So the conversations you have when the risks come to fruition are a little less difficult to have. You know, it still may impact the schedule, budget, you know, quality, but your stakeholders are the ones that helped you determine, you know, what risk they were willing to take. Then, based on your probability and your impact, you come up with your priorities and you categorize. So here's an example. This is a chart I like to use. I like the color. I like, I'm a visual person, so if it falls in the green, it's low impact or probability. If it's greater than a 5 or less than a 0.16, then it's a yellow, which is cautionary, and then otherwise it's a red. And that's for threats as well as opportunities. So an opportunity is a good thing, but it can also put more risk in your project. And then the impact. This is how you score the impact to the cost, schedule, scope, or quality. Again, the colors are good because it is visual and it explains why it's colored that way. It's either, you know, insignificant cost increase, or, you know, the quality is just slightly degraded, or all the way up to the project end item is unusable. Then together, it'll fall into one of the quadrants of the matrix. And then you track everything. And you need some sort of tracking mechanism, an ID, a category, description, your probability, your impact, your priority, always captured who stated the risk. That way, if there's any questions, you know who to go back to, you know, ask more detail. Data was created, and always have an owner. One owner. That means the person who's responsible to see that you come up with a plan to fix or mitigate it. Any notes, and of course, what day it was closed. Here are the pitfalls. If you actually start your development on your project before you have all of your risks defined, you may develop a solution that's unusable. You may develop a solution that doesn't take advantage of some new technology that's already there before you start. If you categorize all risks as a resource constraint, money constraint, or time constraint, the risks are more than just that. These are all really just project related, and there are many more solutions to risk mitigation than resources, money, and time. allow your team to be creative. You don't spend enough time exploring alternative solutions. It's not an exercise you have to rush to get through. I know, it can sometimes be a long and sort of boring process, but if you let it play out, your stakeholders will come up with the right solution, and it'll be very interesting. They'll come up with some awesome ideas. And, you as the project manager, it's not your job is not to solve all the world's problems. Your job is to basically communicate and document and set up meetings. So let, your stakeholders solve the problems and you facilitate that. Let them have discussions. This is a time, if it's a big project, it's a time for the stakeholders to get together across departments, across the company, and some really awesome mitigation solutions can come up. And even new projects, other projects can come out of some of your risk meetings. You'd be surprised. A big pitfall is that you document the risks, but they don't get assigned to anyone. Then there's no solution to them. It's just a waste of everybody's time then. And that's why you have to treat, in my opinion, risk management is a separate activity. It's not just a milestone on your project timeline. It's not just a checklist. It is an active, growing part of the project from the start through the finish. Again, that's just what I spoke to. The risks not being reviewed throughout the project. And sadly, many times, project managers and stakeholders don't do regular risk reviews because it's deemed as pessimistic. Risk, the word risk, is rarely thought of to include opportunities. Just human nature, we think of it as a problem or it's a threat. So I always try and concentrate on the possibility of an opportunity coming from regular risk reviews, because it does, that is a big obstacle to overcome when you're doing these regular risk reviews, because it is seen as, a negative thing in many times. I did want to mention before we go further that there is a poll out there. So if you haven't completed your poll, please do so. Before I go to the next portion.
Sounds great, Jamie.
So what's another way we can make sure that our project is in the winner's circle? We've got to deliver in the money by creating a communication plan at the very start of our project, and again, use it through the very end of the project. Now, I think communication plans are thought of to be many things. So I'm going to start with the basics, communication planning. So this is when you tell your audience why, who, what, when, where, and how. This is just tell your audience everything you can about the project. Answer the why first. Don't wait until training or SOP review to start to communicate about the project. Training is for a tool or a process. It's not the time to start communicating about the project. We have to communicate more than once. People learn different ways. People hear different ways. There's a lot of competition out there. There's a lot of noise competing for people's attention within companies. So we have to get out early and we have to get out often communicating about our project. We want to make sure everyone who's involved, everyone it may touch, knows about the project. And although initially we will be doing most of the talking, we have to remember it's a two-way street. It's sending and receiving a message. We do need to set aside some time for listening. And then after we listen, clarify that we heard correctly. We will learn better ways to deliver our message, and we'll learn how different groups want to hear the message. And we need to consider the best way to deliver to each audience. So consider the audience, the method, the frequency, and the content. Why is this important? We want to be the first to tell the audience our product message. If we don't tell our audience what's happening, the gaps will be filled by something else, by others. And when you're not the one delivering the message, you don't know what's being delivered. And we want people to hear our message about our project. We want to make sure the purpose is understood. This is the why of the project. Also, stakeholders need to know what's expected of them. We want to be honest in our communication. We need to tell the good, the bad, and the ugly. Don't hide the issues. If we hide the issues, they'll surface their ugly heads anyway, and then it'll look like we don't know what the issues are or that we don't know what we're talking about. And by communicating early, often, and honestly, we can help create trust at all levels. We want to eliminate the noise by communicating honestly. This is anything that will interfere with our message. So again, when's the best time to create the communication plan? Much like the risk planning, we start it early. We start it during planning and analysis, and we continue it throughout the life of the project. We revisit it often, and we start scheduling the necessary meetings and events early, again, during planning and analysis. Who creates the communication plan? Again, the PM has the overall responsibility for creating and managing the communication plan, but the entire team, stakeholders, and external team members have the responsibility to contribute and participate. So how do we create the communication plan? So the inputs are company, department, section, event calendars. Use the RACI chart. That's the responsibility, accountability, communicate, and inform chart. And this should have every stakeholder or stakeholder group on it. And then you want to create a plan to communicate how, when, and where to communicate to each of those groups. You'll need your high-level project timeline, your project risk analysis, and your change management assessment. This is going to help you determine all the pieces you need for communication. Then your outputs are going to be your key messages, your elevator speech, and your communication plan. Once you have your key messages and your elevator speech created, you're going to use these two pieces of information in all of your communications. And your project team are going to use that in all of your communications. You want everyone on the same page. You want everyone saying the same message. And which of these two pieces of communication you use is depending on your audience. So here's some tools, example of tools. This is just a worksheet to help you come up with your key messages. I'm just going to touch on a few. I'm not going to read you the whole thing. What are the leadership directives that need to be communicated? How will this project help the company achieve its vision? How will this project impact the team members within each stakeholder group? Will it impact their work or their time? Why should they care about it? This is going to be helpful to all of your stakeholders because this is all stuff we care about. I mean, why should I care about the project? You want to know that. Are there any benefits that need to be communicated that we haven't mentioned yet? How will you keep us informed? These are all questions that will help us form our key messages. And then here are some tips, to keep your message clear. Start each sentence with an action verb. Keep your sentences short. Think of a slogan. If you can come up with a slogan, that's awesome because that's easy for us to remember. Think of all the sales jingles on TV or ads that you think of. If it's something like that, you can remember it. This is two key important things here. Tell the truth. Tell how the project really impacts the audience, even if it's not all blue skies and sunny days. If it's negative, include ways you will attempt to mitigate the issue. Stick to the facts of what you know today. If the statement you've written is not true at this time, it's not a key message and you should not be communicating it. Admit it if the project does not benefit this audience. Then focus your key message on who it will help and why it's still important for us to do it. And then from the key messages, the elevator speech will be developed. I know you've probably heard of an elevator speech, like if you're talking about yourself, but this is about your project. So it's just a quick little couple of sentences. If you're in the elevator with, say, the senior vice president or the owner of the company, and he asks you about your project, what are you going to say? So these are the questions that you work through to come up with that. What's the problem your project is trying to fix? What's your proposed solution? What's the reason your project exists? What makes this solution unique? How will this solution benefit the company? What do we expect to see happen as a result of this project? So those are all great questions. And then this is an example of what is in the communication plan. There's 2 mandatory sections and then 2 optional. This one is a mandatory. This is all the definitions. So everyone's operating from the same page. It's, what's an audience? What are your engagement opportunities? Basic info to communicate, key messages. And it typically is the same for every communication plan. Then you've got the actual communication plan itself. And it lists every activity, the audience, engagement, basic information, key messages for that audience. Who owns the communication, who creates the communication, name of the communication, vehicle, possible risks or sensitivities for that office, timing and frequency, and is it complete or not? So those are the two mandatory. The optional sections are an engagement calendar. And this is if you wish, if you want to track all the different times you plan to visit, and when you've completed it, if you've confirmed it, and any comments. And then the last one is just reiterating what your key messages are. And then any notes.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate it, Jamie.
And then just types of communication. I know I don't really probably have to go over this, but you know, we got email, SharePoint site, Google Docs, phone conversations. All I'm going to say about this is consider your audience and ask them how they would like to be communicated to. Take advantage of meetings that are already set up, events that are already going on. If you don't have to schedule a separate meeting, don't. Take advantage of events, meetings that are already scheduled. You're talking to large groups or, you know, any meetings you can take advantage, like start of shift meetings, quarterly updates, project meetings that are already set up. Take that time. We're all busy. Nobody wants to attend a second meeting if they don't have to. And I just want to remind you that if you want to make sure you finish in the winner's circle, do not forget these two easily overlooked or tedious things that really can help your project finish in the winner's circle. And that is avoid congestion with a proactive risk management and mitigation throughout the project, and deliver in the money by creating and managing a communication plan from the project start through the finish. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you, Jamie.
I'll
I
make sure
appreciate
that we finish the poll so we can see what the answers are. I'll turn it back to you.
All right, thank you. So let's see, kind of a shallow poll result. Not sure if it's working accurately or not, but let's look. So not many poll results. I'm not sure if it wasn't working appropriately. Well, Jamie, thank you. I appreciate it. We're at the end of our time. For those that participated and dialed in, we appreciate it. If you do have any questions about anything that you've heard today, please let us know. Our contact information is available. And with that, thank you again and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank
everyone.
you.